Welcome to Well Coached, a podcast about how people, sales, profit, and self can transform your business. I'm your host, Chris Weinberg, and I have helped hundreds of entrepreneurs get into their highest productivity zone and become corporate enough to succeed. Let's get into today's episode. Hey team, welcome back to the Well Coached podcast. We are in for a treat today. I am joined by a true pioneer of urban development, Mr. Tony Giarratana. For just about 4 decades now, maybe coming up on 4 decades. He's been at the forefront of shaping Music City's skyline. He's leading projects that have redefined downtown living, and I've been the benefactor of 2 of those buildings. He developed Nashville's first high-rise apartments and condominiums, introduced the first modern grocery store since 1967, has played a key role in all kinds of historic preservation efforts, and he and his team work on the most ambitious and the coolest things in this city. The one coming up now is the highly anticipated Paramount Tower, which is going to change the skyline again, nestled right in between Prom and Alcove. Tony's eye for what's supposed to be here is second to none. And in addition to his business and real estate, he has remained deeply engaged in giving back to this city, whether that's on the Nashville Symphony Board or the Zoo Board or the Nashville City Club, which has benefited me greatly, or Monroe Carroll Children's Hospital, Lipscomb University. It just goes on and on. Tony is a guy that this city has needed. He has been here at the right time in the right place, unbelievably well respected, and hopefully your ears are on because you're going to learn something today. So with that, Tony, welcome.
Great. Thank you, Chris. I appreciate all that. You're very high energy. I hope I'm up to it this morning.
I got a feeling I won't be able to outrun you. Guys, as you know, we always talk about in the lanes of people, sales, profit, and self, and we're going to do that today with Tony. So if it's okay with you, I'm going to start rocking and rolling.
Great. Let's
go. First up, so you've built this incredible career in urban real estate development. What initially drew you to the industry, and what keeps you passionate about continuing to reshape the skyline?
Yeah, it was a particular auditorium class at the University of South Florida when I was a young college student. I think I was a junior. The professor asked what everybody in the 200-seat auditorium was going to do, and about 80% of them raised their hand that they were going to be bankers. Back then, I didn't know how cool investment banking could be, but I certainly didn't want to be in a bank. And so I drove back to Clearwater, Florida, where I lived, and took a walk on the beach. And I was just a little bit bummed about my not having a clear path for my future. And I looked up at these hotels that I had worked as a laborer, picking up nails and sweeping floors and what have you as a teenager. And I said, those guys developing those buildings seem to be having a good time. That's what I'm going to do. And I decided on the spot. Got into the real estate business and never looked back.
Wow. I did not know that. That's amazing. Large-scale developments like Paramount and Alcove, stay in the people section here, require, as you know, so much collaboration with the investors and city leaders and communities. How do you approach that relationship building and negotiating in these unbelievably complex things that you do?
Yeah, it's very difficult. As you probably talk about on your podcast, there's always conflicting interests. Everybody's got an interest. And for me and my developments, I'm trying to do something special. I have to work within all the rules and regulations that govern what we do. Some very reasonable, life safety as an example, others not. But it's important to work cooperatively with all the agencies. In Nashville, Tennessee, whoever sits in the mayor's seat is the most powerful person. The mayor really sets the pace, sets the direction, dictates where the city's going, and the Metro Council would be next in line. And then you've got a myriad agencies like planning and NDOT and MDHA and others, water and sewer, that electrical, NES, all these things have to be brought to bear to have a successful development. And if you miss something, any of it, you could jeopardize the whole project.
Well, I often talk about, I think that most successful business people are primarily in the relationship business, even more so important than their core competency. And I would guess that's probably pretty true for you. You've got to get along with so many different people.
Yeah, and I've had blessed to work with some of the best people in town for a long period of time. My lawyer, as an example, Bo Campbell, has been representing me. He would say long enough, but I'd say certainly over a quarter of a century. And so good people like that by your side, very, very important. And I have advisors on the metro level, an advisor on the state level to help guide me through what's happening. What are people thinking? What are the goals and objectives?
Yeah. So for those out there listening, what I just got that from Tony is long-term relationships of surrounding yourself with experts in their field and hopefully trusting their judgment along the way.
Yes.
Yeah. You've been a civic leader also for decades and serving on the boards of Lipscomb and the Zoo and Symphony, City Club, others. How has that community engagement, if at all, how has that influenced your leadership style?
Well, I try to bring something to each of these boards. Some of the boards, I'm sad to say, I don't make all the meetings. And I think that what my hope is that I can contribute something. And I found myself telling the board chairs, I think somebody else in this seat might be more profitable for the board. But I try to bring some contribution, not just sit there and enjoy good food and fellowship, but actually make a contribution. So I think the older I get, the more anxious I get about the use of my time. And so that's really important to me. If I can't make a contribution, it's best that I move on.
Okay. What a fair way to put it. Well, I'm appreciative of you considering the City Club one still worthy of your time and attention, because it has certainly mattered.
Longest association of anything I've done since 1984.
Wow.
That's when I was first on the junior board, the under 35 board at the club, and I've been associated with the club 40 years now.
Oh, amazing. Real estate is a long game and often takes years, right? Years to see a vision come to life. I'm curious about how do you keep your team aligned and motivated through these long, extended periods between start and finish of a project?
Yeah, the fact that you said long game and having a long view, that's exactly what is really the cornerstone of our company. So it's interesting to hear you say that. People don't use that expression very often, but we have to make decisions today and take action today for things that we would like to do 2 and 3 years out. So we really have to be thinking ahead. Our developments are, the larger the scale, the longer the lead time, and the larger and more complex they are, the more important it is to start early. And so pre-development on a smaller project like a 5-story stick-built apartment building, maybe you get that done in a year, all the design, engineering, entitlements, finance. But for a larger scale project like Paramount, it is about a 4-year process. That's just to get ready to pull the trigger for that development. So it'd be very foolish to start without having all the questions answered.
Do the younger folks on your team, do you have to teach that patience, or do you kind of bring people on the team that have long view, or is that something you teach to young folks? Or some people are built for immediate gratification and some people are built for delayed gratification. And I'm wondering how people in your team come into you like that. Is that a learned behavior, or you're seeking people out who kind of you can see early on that they're in it, that they can be patient?
Yeah, it's an excellent question. I hope they're not going to listen to this podcast, but everybody on my team has been hand selected.
Okay.
Nobody came to us on a referral and here's a person, here's a friend. Why don't they find a place for them in your company? We had a particular need in a particular area, and we went out looking for the right person to fit that company. And it doesn't always work out. And those are heartbreaking moments because I really like everybody. But having a team and everybody working cooperatively together is very important. Having everybody believe in the vision, that we're all going in the same way, paddling the boat in the same direction is very, very important. And so, but each one of these people are extraordinary. The lady that does marketing for us is, we've been knowing each other for going on 30 years.
Wow. Wow.
The young lady that's the executive vice president of the company, Morgan Stengel, she interned with us when she was at the University of North Carolina as a student athlete. And so she's been with us a long time. My development director, Ted Cromer, has been with me since 1984. And so think about the longevity of these people. Even folks on the concierge level were with us since 1998. On the maintenance, our senior maintenance supervisor, we had to come up with a better title than that, but he's been with us since 1998 as well. And so it's rewarding to have super smart, super capable people. And sometimes it's difficult because there's competing goals and objectives and competing priorities, and that is dangerous. And so those are the difficult times when we have to stay focused and say, these 5 things have to be our priority, and these other 10, 20 things that we're all passionate about just have to wait a bit. Don't go away. They just have to wait until we can get these priorities taken care of. So I hope that made some sense, but
No.
There's an old saying, tyranny of the urgent. Urgent is different than priorities, and there are urgent things that pop up that can ruin a perfectly good day. But we find if we stay on our priorities and engage all the resources of the team, we can get through it.
So what I hear from that team out there is that the leader sets the pace for the pack. Tony, second to none in terms of vision casting, and then sticking with your team, and that either learning by osmosis or learning by being around you so long, and providing a great place for them to be, or they wouldn't be there. And so you're just managing so many things. I mean, big vision and people, those are difficult challenges to harness.
It is, and I should point out that we, on the outside, on a contract basis, we engage with the top professionals in their field, the top architects, the top engineers. Surveying is such a critical thing. Nobody thinks about it. It's a relatively small part of the budget, but if it's wrong, you never recover from that. And so getting the best in the best and then pushing them to do their best. And then partners, financial partners. We recently walked away from a very significant investment that we needed. We nearly $90 million investment, and I just got uncomfortable with the relationship and felt like I needed to pull the plug. And so those are difficult decisions to make, but I think in the long run, getting back to the long view, it's the right decision to make.
The ox is slow, but the earth is patient. One more in the people section. You've worked on so many historic preservation projects in addition to these modern high-rises. How do you balance honoring both? How do you balance honoring the Nashville's past while really shaping its future?
Yeah, it's really a difficult area. And so I recently hosted a recent class graduation. I don't know exactly what it was, for Metro Historical Commission at the Elliston Place Soda Shop, which is something that had closed, and we brought it back to life. We were instrumental in the preservation of the Belmead Theater. We did that development while protecting the front. St. Cloud Corner, we put Puckett's Restaurant in there to save an otherwise languishing building. The Cornerstone Square is now the Maddox Hotel. It was a failed office building. We would have loved to have demolished the building to put a tower on that corner, but the city didn't want us to do that. And the gentleman that put the facade easement is a wonderful, Bob Tuke is a wonderful lawyer. And he said, Tony, I hate it, but if you try to do that, I'm going to have to fight you. And so we have done a lot of preservation. I think at the Cohen Building, an 1895 building, the little country store, 120-year-old country store at the corner of my farm I call it the most expensive, useless building in Williamson County. And so we do a lot of preservation. But the thing that most folks that are preservation-minded recall is that I did take down a building that really needed to go. It was beyond salvageable, and I get punished for that. And it doesn't matter that I've been here 40 years and I've done a lot of good things. That's what I get remembered for. So, but that decision that was made in conjunction with the family whose name was on the building, that particular development helped spur the residential housing in the urban core, which there was none. And so we were the first, we did the first apartments in downtown Nashville, high-rise apartments at that corner.
Wow.
And if we had not done that, which was the idea of then Mayor Phil Bredesen, then we wouldn't have 20,000 people living in downtown Nashville today. So a pebble dropping in the water, it had great impact. But getting back to the historic preservation, we're still active in historic preservation. We're in the process of saving what's important on Elliston Place, called a rock block, saving those buildings that are important to be saved, and other buildings that are, let's face it, they're not significant, and neither are they attractive.
Right.
And they'll be replaced with buildings that'll contribute to the urban fabric of the area. So it's a constant challenge.
Chess. You're playing chess all the time.
It is. And it's hard to make everybody happy. My daughter now works with us, Kate.
Yep.
And so she came up to me after one of our presentations. We do presentations all the time. And she said, "Dad, you like to come in and have a Jack Daniels and water. And I think after you have that Jack Daniels, you may talk too much. Would you mind not doing that?" And I'm like, gosh, maybe she's right. And so I've stopped having a drink before my presentations. And she hasn't complained since.
How about that?
But so it's interesting. She's 26 years old and she's scolding me.
Well, she knows you as good as anybody.
Yes.
And there's a little danger in her telling you like it is. Right? So.
But I love being corrected. I mean, I think some people have the attitude that I think I know everything. That's false.
Yeah.
I'm dying to learn new things. I've learned things from you, and you wanted to do that golf thing. I was adamantly opposed to that. I don't know if you know that.
Yeah, I remember.
I was adamantly opposed to that, but after talking to you, I said, This is a good thing. This is going to be good for the club. And going into that conversation, I was ready to tell you I was going to vote no, and not just vote no, fight against it. And by the time I got done talking to you, I was like, yeah, I mean, it's not what I would have done, but he's right. We got to do this. And now everybody can look back in retrospect and say, well, should we have done something different? Should we have done that? But at the time, we didn't know it.
That's right.
And so, but I love learning new things, and the worst thing is to make a decision and take an action, and then learn later that you should have zigged when you zagged, and then it's really costly.
Yeah. So guys out there listening, Tony just said a bunch, right? Continuous learner, continuous student of the game, and wisdom is in the group. Right? Yeah. All of us are smarter than one of us. And that's one thing that keeps his iron sharp. Tony constantly surrounds himself with good people. And although he's got a big old brain on his head and could absolutely make all the decisions by himself, he's still willing at his place in life to take feedback and listen to others' opinions. And you can see the results of that all over town of how that works.
And something that may be of interest to some of your listeners, 5 of the 6 leadership positions in our company are held by women. And we have some very colorful conversations about different topics. And there's a lot of energy that goes into decisions like design and finish and layout, and materials, and marketing. And I remember Morgan one day put her finger in my face and she said, "It was your idea to have all women leading your company. Get used to it." And I'm like, wow, she's right. And so I limped away.
Good.
And but so it's I wish they were all here. You can if you could just look at them and talk to them, you'd understand.
Well, maybe the next episode is I'll have them in.
Yes.
Have them in without
you ought to have them in as a group. It'll
perfect.
be your most successful show ever.
I'm going to remember that.
Yeah.
Hey team, are you looking to elevate your golf game year-round? Nashville City Golf, located within the Nashville City Club at 200 2nd Avenue South, offers a premier indoor golfing experience right in the heart of downtown. With over 350 real-world courses available on state-of-the-art TrackMan.io simulators, you can challenge yourself on some of the world's most renowned fairways without leaving the city. Whether you're a seasoned golfer or just starting out, our facility caters to all skill levels. Features of the club include TrackMan.io performance tracking, an adjustable swing stage, indoor putting, and great upscale lounge and food and beverage, as well as PGA instruction right on site. Nashville City Golf isn't just about swinging a club, it's about experiencing a revolution in golf practice and entertainment. Our cutting-edge features elevate your game and create an unforgettable experience. We offer flexible membership options to suit your needs, as well as booking for an individual sessions. Ready to tee off? Visit NashvilleCityGolf.com to learn more about memberships, book a session, or schedule a lesson with one of our PGA instructors. Elevate your game at Nashville City Golf, where the best of golf meets the best of Nashville. We're going to change gears. So we just finished the people part. Let's talk about the sales channel for a second. So you sell visions, and selling a vision is often very more difficult than selling a product. How do you convince the investors and stakeholders to back projects that don't even exist?
Yeah, it's. I wish I could say it's gotten easier, but it hasn't. A blessing and a curse that I have, and I truly mean that, is if I look at a piece of property, I can envision what should be on that property in its completed and operating form, and it haunts me. And so realizing this curse, I try not to get involved. Somebody calls up and says, "Hey, I want you to get involved in this," and say, "I'm really going to have to decline. It's not in our wheelhouse. It's not in our sandbox. We need to stick with what we've got. I'm sorry I can't be a part of that." And if I don't get off the phone quickly enough, I get sucked into it, and then I'm obsessed with it, and I'm drawing and sketching and envisioning and what have you. So it's a real problem. And focus and prioritization is so huge in the area of envisioning things. You got to complete what you started.
Right.
Anybody can start well. It's that finishing part that is often neglected. And so we spend a lot of time on the completion and the wrap up. It's not just the building's done, let's move on to the next one. No, we have to document that. Why? Because in 3 or 4 years, it's going to be an issue. And so my team, I know they look at me like I'm insane wanting to get all these documents together. And what I try to impress upon them, in 2028, nobody's going to remember these things. Let's document it right now, because it is going to become an issue several years from now. And so I hope that is meaningful in some way.
Awesome. Let's talk about a couple of your most recent projects, Prom and Alcove.
Yes.
Right across the street from each other. From what I can see, they cater slightly to different demographics of renters, buyers. How do you approach market positioning and branding for each project?
Yeah, so Alcove came first, and Alcove, it's a fascinating story for another day, but that building, we had a goal of having a tower that was visually stimulating, geared towards the technology worker that was just coming to town. We really never had technology. And here's Amazon,
Right.
going to be essentially right next door. And so we challenged our architect to design a building that was visually stimulating. And alcove was his very first sketch. And we accepted the design off of a sketch that he scanned to us. And he's like, what? And I said, lad, you're wasting my time. Please get going. And we moved at warp speed on that building. But our plan was to do a sister building across the street. And as for one reason or another, the negotiations took a long time, almost a year, to get that piece of land. And so when we got that piece of land, it's COVID time. And so we designed a very different building. And the difference is subtle, but we learned things on alcove that we were able to put into prime. And also we asked our architect, we're designing a building during a worldwide pandemic. There must be something different that we should incorporate into this building. And he didn't have an idea. Nobody on my team had an idea. So we asked our architect's wife, Eva, who is a brilliant young lady that worked for Gensler and what have you. We said, Eva, what should be different in this building? And she said, let me think about that. And the next day she said, Zoom niche. And I said, what? She goes, everybody's working from home. Everybody needs a place to sit with power and data, a area behind them that they don't have to make their bed or clean their kitchen.
Yeah.
They can have this Zoom call, and that was it. We incorporated Zoom niches into all those units.
Wow.
So that was big.
Wow.
And people walk through and say, what a nice idea. And it all came from that conversation with Eva.
Back to wisdom is in the group.
Yes.
That's fantastic. I did not know that.
And a woman.
Wow. How about that? Guys, and if you don't live in Nashville, or if you haven't had experience of seeing the things Tony's built, all of this is so searchable on his own website, which we'll give out, but just go look at Prime and Alcove and Paramount and Viridian and Encore. I mean, it goes on and on. You can see the result of Tony says what he's going to do, and then he does it, which is pretty cool. So with this rapid growth, I would assume that the competition for real estate has gotten much more difficult over time since you've been here. And how do you keep leading the market? How do you stay out in front? Because you're constantly getting the best spots, building the best buildings in the best locations. How are you keeping yourself out front?
Well, it goes back to the first thing we're talking about, looking forward and trying to anticipate what's going to happen. You know, when we got involved in Elliston Place, all I was trying to do was find a new, bigger home for the Elliston Place Soda Shop. And in pursuing that, we optioned several parcels of land.
Okay.
And after doing that, we landed on one, but I had all these options on this other property. And I was invited to speak to a historic preservation group. And perfect example, I got there early and had a margarita, so maybe I shouldn't have talked so much, but we got talking about preservation and what's going to happen to all these buildings across the street that we had under contract. And I said, well, I think they're all going to be demolished. They have very little value. I suspect they're going to be demolished. I know they're beloved, but they've been vacant for a decade. And why do you think that's the case? Because no one can make any economic sense of these buildings on this very valuable dirt. And they said, well, what could we do to turn that around? I said, well, you could work with a developer to do a higher density development behind it, and therefore you could save the fronts of the buildings 45 feet deep, not just facades, but really active buildings, and those buildings can be preserved in that way. And they went, great, we agree. And I'm like, what? I wasn't proposing to do this, but that's how I got involved. And we went agency and department by department through Metro, asking for permits to do this and that. And I kept truly hoping that anybody would say no so I can get my neck out of this noose. But everybody said yes. So we'll do that. And Paramount is Paramount and is taking up all of our time. But when we get the opportunity, we will complete the rock block.
Okay.
And we, so how crazy is this? We have that development right there. We have another development on a property not more than 150 feet away that we're working on. And then the gentleman across the street that owns some prime property said, I'd like you to be involved in developing my property. And so we have only negative cash flow on all these properties right now. But we learned a long time ago that doing developments in groups of 3 made a lot of sense. Now, somebody like Southwest Value Partners, a much larger developer, they can do many buildings simultaneously. But for a small building developer like us, we need to have a little bit more modest objective. But we did learn that doing buildings in groups of 3 is a very profitable way to do it. The first building is very difficult. Second building, you're starting to get in your groove and you've created an area that people want to be in. The third building, it's an out-of-the-park home run.
And does Paramount fit that with the Alcove and Prime? Is that the strategy there?
Yes.
For those of you who don't know, these 3 buildings are literally across the street from each other in a very dense, compact area of town.
Yes, and other examples would be Cumberland, Viridian, and 505. And then Encore, Sobro, and the Bridgestone headquarters. And then out in Belmead, we did the Belmead Shopping Center with a large grocery. We did an office building for Regions Bank with apartments on top of it. And then we did condos across the street. So we always try to do things in groups of 3. And when Nashville Yards really became clear to us, because we were wondering what are they thinking on taking down these 19 acres. But when Amazon signed a lease for 2 towers, well, I didn't need any more coaching.
There's your sign.
I was there. And so we quickly acquired the first 2 properties, as I described. The third one, the Paramount Tower, took us another couple of years to get. But
will you talk about the complexity of that one a little bit? Because that was actually my next question. The Paramount Tower is going to be the tallest skyscraper in Nashville. What are some of the unique challenges and opportunities that come with marketing and leasing such a landmark property? And also tell us a little bit about how you got that property, because it sits on top of another iconic YMCA that's been there forever. So years ago, in 1984, when I came to town, I went to work out at the YMCA first night in the city, and worked out. And a guy walks up to me. He was a large Lebanese attorney. We were all younger back then, very fit basketball player. And he looked at me and he said, "Well, you're certainly not from around here." As an Italian guy, I think Mario and I were the only 2 Italians in the city. And I said, "No, I just got here." He goes, "Well, you're having dinner with my family tonight." And I said, "Great. I don't know anybody." So I went to his house, and his name was Nader Beydoun, and he and I became fast friends, and we're still friends. And he handles different matters for me over the years. But that's how important the YMCA was in my life. My life would have been very different if I had not met Nader that night. Very different. And that's true for a lot of people. Years later, I was involved in a group that helped with youth and that were struggling, and it ultimately merged with the YMCA and became YCAP. YCAP is now a national program. Wow. And so there's a lot of connections back to the YMCA, but the YMCA invited me to a meeting with several of their board members to view some slides or PowerPoint presentation, I'm dating myself, of their visions for redeveloping the YMCA campus. And I watched these things for 3 or 4 hours and got all done. And I said, "Well, I appreciate you having me over. I agree that this campus has a great deal of potential, but I just ask you one thing." And they said, "What's that?" I said, "Please don't do any of the things that were shown on those PowerPoint slides." I mean, they were all really terrible. And so we walked out the front door, and we're standing there on the street looking across at this 11,000-foot piece of property across the street. And I said, "Hey, don't you own that property across the street?" And they said, "Yeah, it's surplus property." I said, "Would you sell that to me?" And they said, "Well, what will you pay for it?" And I thought about a transaction that was done in Sobro for the Four Seasons that was
$500 a foot. I said, how about $500 a foot? And they laughed at me and they said, great, write it up. And that night I wrote up a contract, signed it the next day, and there's Veridian.
Wow.
That's how fast Veridian went.
Wow.
We closed that transaction within 3 or 4 weeks.
Wow.
And so that was very good. And then later, in I think it was January of 2021, they issued a request for proposal, which really hurt my feelings because we've been working on Church Street for all these years. And who are these other developers? And so they had 8 or 9 other developers. And so we thought about this a little bit. And I said, what do I think these other developers are going to propose to the YMCA? And I was confident that they would all do the same old, same old. They'd build a big parking podium, a tower in one corner, a tower in the other, and put the YMCA in there as like they would put a Starbucks restaurant. So I said, we're not going to do that. We're going to leave the YMCA 8,000 square feet at the prime corner. And they're going to own that land. And in addition to designing our building, we're going to design a new state-of-the-art YMCA, a big city YMCA, and we're going to get the cost of that, and we're going to pay for the piece that we're going to develop Paramount on a price that would cover the cost of building the new YMCA. And if they hired us to be their developer, we would do that development for free.
Wow.
And so it was a nice package, and we presented it. And just like I thought, all the other developers proposed exactly what I imagined they were going to propose. But I think the new YMCA and the opportunity to own that, to maintain the 1000 Church Street address that they had for such a long time, and the combination of all that made us the successful bidder. And we that was about a year-long RFP, signed a contract, closed on it the next year, and then the rest is history. We're poised to develop this magnificent tower.
It's going to be the best thing ever. Amazing. So let's talk about the profit side of the business. And real estate requires significant upfront investment. Upfront
Yes.
investment is huge, and returns are often long term. How do you balance risk and profitability in these high stake games that you're playing, in these high stake developments? How do you balance those two things?
Am I perspiring right now? I might be perspiring right now. So
You get a little shaky.
The 2024 was a very difficult year for an apartment developer. And if I can speak to that, and I'll tell you before I even start, it was even a worse year for the office developers, believe me. But as an apartment developer, we had a confluence of bad events. Back in 2020, 21, 22, Nashville was the bright shining star. We were ranked number one city in the nation for real estate investment. And we held that position for 3 years. And so everybody in the country read the same reports at the same moment, poured billions of dollars into this community, and much of what they built were apartments.
Right.
And so nationwide and locally, more apartments got delivered in 2024, completions of apartments in 2024 than at any time in the history of the nation other than 1974.
Wow.
So 50 years. That's a 50-year event.
Right.
And so there was a tremendous amount of supply. Supply outpaced demand. At the same time as supply outpaced demand, folks were nervous. They were nervous about the economy, nervous about inflation, nervous about conflicts around the world. There's a lot of things to be nervous about. Interest rates were high. And so it was just a terrible year. So what's happening this year? So in August, for the first time in almost 3 years, demand will equal the supply.
Excellent.
And we track this very, very closely. So in August, let's just call that Q3 of 2025, supply and demand will equalize.
Okay.
And then in first quarter of 2026, now demand is outpacing supply, rates will go up, concessions will disappear, I think by then interest rates will start to moderate, cap rates will come down, et cetera, et cetera. There'll be no starts of new product in 23 and 24. Therefore, there'll be a low supply, high demand environment. And that's when newspaper reporters will say, what bad people you are raising rents for your on your apartments. And there's no stories right now about all the free rent and vacancy that we're carrying.
That's right.
But in 2026, we're going to be the bad guy for trying to recoup some of those losses. So real estate has been a very difficult game, but I thank God that we're in Nashville, Tennessee, because Nashville, Tennessee continues to be, we've been top 10 for a decade, number 1 for 3 years. We're currently in the top 5. We're behind only 2 cities in Texas and 2 cities in Florida as the best places to invest capital. In spite of that, there are very, very few new starts, and that's a healthy thing.
Okay.
But hard to raise capital in this environment. But we work at it every day, and I think we've been maybe more successful than most at being able to raise debt and equity capital.
Want to understand yourself and the people around you like never before? If you've been listening to me talk about the DISC profile, then you know how powerful it can be. But now it's time to take it a step further. Introducing my DISC Profile Mastermind Series, a one-of-a-kind in-person experience designed to crack the code to better relationships, better communication, and ultimately better results. In this exclusive mastermind, I'll be sharing expert insights on how you and the people around you can work best for growth, success, and even profit. Whether you're leading a team, building stronger personal relationships, or just trying to navigate everyday interactions, this is your chance to level up. This mastermind begins May 15th, but here's the thing. This mastermind has very limited space, and it's happening live at the Nashville City Club, right in the heart of the city where business meets creativity. To reserve your spot today, head over to wellcoachedconsulting.com. Spaces are going to fill up fast, so don't wait. That's wellcoachedconsulting.com, where understanding each other isn't just a theory, it's the key to unlocking the next level of your business. Many developers focus on either luxury or affordable. You have done both. And so when you're working across both ends of the spectrum, how do you determine what's financially viable in each lane? How do you make those decisions?
Yeah, so we have a significant, some say 30,000+ unit deficit of affordable housing in this city. And I understand from some of the reports that the mayor's office does that it's growing by 5,000 units per year. And if the numbers made sense, then that would not be true. If it was financially viable to build affordable housing, there would be plenty of affordable housing, but it's not financially viable. And so the nonprofit sector receives all kinds of incentives, such as low-income housing tax credits and block grants and land allocations and what have you. The private sector receives nothing.
Okay.
And so my thesis is, having done 324 units already, my thesis is that there are no programs currently that will engage the private sector to help address this deficit of workforce housing. So I have been working with the city and with the state to try to come up with a plan. I have to admit I'm getting fatigued. I hate to say it, but I've been working for over 2 years on a particular building, and there is a feeling that yes, we need housing, but golly, what if we give away too many concessions? What if the developer actually can make a profit off this development? And there's that fear causes the incentive to never be enough to actually drive the private sector to take action in this regard. So I'm making one last push currently. This is ongoing. One last effort to get something done. And if we can get it done, then I believe that I have arrived at a formula, a secret sauce, if you will, to create thousands of units of workforce housing. And it's a very creative solution, and I hope that I get to do it. But if not, then I'm sorry. I've done the best I can. We've invested almost $9 million in this project.
Wow.
And my team and I are feeling like the giving tree. I mean, we just can't give any more. And so I'm very hopeful that this is going to be successful. I truly am. And there's another developer here in this town by the name of Elmington, really smart people, very capable. They are also trying to make something work in this private sector area. And my message to the city is, hey, if you don't want to work with me, work with them. They're very, very smart. They're very capable. And they're the only ones trying to do something in the urban core. Let's support them in this effort, but let's do something, not just keep talking about it. So giving back to the community is important, and all you can do is try. And if it doesn't work, at least you tried.
Right. Okay. Last question in the profit section. What financial lessons, if any, from your early career do you still apply today when you're analyzing new projects?
Well, I think the fundamental, this is all elementary. This is all Sesame Street. You gotta have a clear vision of what you're creating. You need to know exactly what the building is going to cost. And you need to believe that the completed project is going to be worth more than it cost to build. And I know that your listeners are probably laughing what a ridiculous thing is, but I can assure you that many, many developments get done, and there really isn't an understanding of what is the value of the completed project going to be worth more than it cost. And I look at these things, and everybody's enthusiastic about it, but I just scratch my head and say, really? Is that, what can go wrong here? A lot can go wrong. And so we earlier I mentioned how much time we put into the ready, aim part, the preparation side of a development. And we often get to the point where we say, this doesn't work. We want to do it. We're passionate about it. We're excited about it. We got a great team to do it. But if we did it, if we created it, it would be a failure. And so we withdraw from that, sell the land, move on, do something else. And so I don't know if that's responsive to your question.
So it sounds like in addition, because Tony's got unbelievable vision, and I think you certainly see things in abundance, but it also sounds like you're measuring worst case scenario before you even get going.
We do an optimistic, a base case, and a pessimistic.
Okay.
And some people call that good, better, best, but that's not the way we look at it. We look at what do we think is going to happen? Then a pessimistic side, what if a couple of these metrics changed? Cost go up, rents go down, interest rates, time. What if? And so if those things happen, we have a pessimistic case. And we call it that because we're all optimistic, but we have to have an eye to this. And then we have the optimistic. And the optimistic says, if the sun and the moon, the stars all line up, wouldn't this be great? But that's not what we base our decisions on. We base them on the base case.
Okay. With
an eye towards the worst case or pessimistic case, and hopeful of the best case or the optimistic case.
A little bit off topic, but I'm curious about this. The phrase time kills deals.
Yes.
Are you a believer of that? Is that true?
Yes. I think in a construction project, time most certainly kills deals. However, from a timing perspective, if you allow yourself to believe that there's other dynamics that in this river of life that we live in, sometimes failing to get something done when you want to get it done is not a bad thing. I think about a tower I wanted to do years ago, and I pulled the plug at the last minute, and I lost many millions of dollars on that project. But I'm so thankful I didn't build it, because I would have been living in a cardboard box underneath an overpass. But and sometimes it's better if a project gets delayed, because it delivers in a more favorable market.
Okay.
But most of the time, it's better to implement your plan when you're ready to do it and get the project done.
Okay. We'll round it out in the self category. What's been, if you can think of it, so you've had a bunch of them, what's been the biggest challenge of your career, and how'd you get through it?
Wow. I'm still living with many of those same challenges. Convincing equity investors that we know what we're doing, convincing lenders that we know what we're doing, convincing buyers that they will want to be a part of what we're creating. And in that regard, we have completed 2,700 apartments, and in addition to that, 1,000 condominiums. And we can walk around and show people things, but it doesn't move the needle. I can bring people up into my penthouse condominium in 505 and get oohs and ahs. And the reason we have that unit, I don't need that unit. The reason we have it is because we use it to market what we do. We can bring folks up and say, this is what we create. These are the views that you would enjoy. This is the quality of the construction that you can expect. Please stay with us. This is the experience that you would have living in one of our buildings. And it takes all of that to convince folks that what we're doing is special, what we're doing is worth investing in, what we're doing is worth buying and living in. And so that has not changed. And I probably sound kind of whiny to say it's no easier now than it was before. Well, certainly I think it is easier, but than it was when I was working on my first one. But it still is a challenge. And I'll close by saying it is a person-to-person, face-to-face, one conversation after another. These developments don't just happen. There's not a machine that spits them out. It's individuals have to make a decision, heavy sigh, swallow hard, and say, yes, we're going to do this development because we believe that in you, we believe in the product, we believe that in your track record, we believe that you can get this done. But still, it's going to be a nerve-wracking several years for everybody involved.
You're with all the things you've done and living in the pressure cooker and certainly figuring out how to handle that. How do you keep yourself somewhat balanced with family? Keeping yourself balanced with what you do with family has got to be no easy feat. And yet you've got a beautiful long-term marriage. You've got kids that are doing great and successful. You're grounded in the community. You have some hobbies. How do you intentionally look after yourself and your family?
Well, my wife and kids come first. I absolutely love my son and daughter. I wish my son was in Nashville. He's down in Florida. But I love being with them. I have a wife that I've known her for 40 years. We've been married 34 years next month.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And the things that are important to her that are outside work, I make them important to me. And she likes being on a farm and having horses, so we're going to have a farm and have horses, and I love it. But it's if I was a single guy, I'd be living in a skyscraper downtown. But the hobby that we have embraced together has been a lifelong passion of mine, which is sailing. And it was Lisa one day about 8 years ago. She walked in to the room and I was looking at a picture book of these boats. And she said, "Why don't you buy that boat?" And I said, "What?" She goes, "You've been looking at that picture book for 35 years. didn't you think you were ever going to own that boat? I
Wow.
said, honey, I just like looking at the boats and dreaming. She goes, let's go buy the boat. And it was her idea. We flew up to Newport, Rhode Island, and we identified a boat and we bought it.
Wow.
And it's the boat turns 25 years old this year, but is in meticulous condition. And a big part of my daydreaming is going offshore and racing to Bermuda and being hundreds of miles from any piece of land. I just love it out there. And if there's good weather, that's fantastic. But mostly we get a lot of bad weather, and that's fantastic as well. And so the older I get, the more I want to try to do things to push myself and prove that I can still do it. And so I love sailing on the ocean, and I do it single-handed now a lot. And next year after the race, I'm going to sail Bella back single-handed to Newport.
Wow.
And so I'm looking forward to that. That's just another thing that I can daydream about. It makes the difficult days that we sometimes have a lot nicer when I can picture myself out there at sunset.
And I would suspect that's some of your best ideas probably come when you're on that boat.
It does work, and now it's Starlink on it. I'm never far away.
Not too far away. Well, this has been great, guys. Tony is what a wonderful example of the four things we constantly talk about here of trying to have harmony in people, sales, profit, and self. And really enjoyed your leadership and mentorship and friendship. So
likewise.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chris.
Well, thank you.
I appreciate you having me on your show.
All right, team. That's it for today. Go like us and love us on all the favorite podcasts and subscribe and tell all your friends. Thanks a bunch. Well, guys, that's a wrap for today. We thank you a ton for listening and looking forward to the next episode where we'll continue this journey on how becoming corporate enough can put you in your highest productivity zone to create a successful, profitable, and purpose-driven business for you.